It wasn't a helicopter, it wasn't a balloon, and it was so near.
And you look what sort of round, white,
just
luminescent, and silent.
Silent, and it looked dark, like black or gray in the middle. And
welcome back to this channel. Today we're diving into one of the most fascinating and bittersweet locations in music history. John Lennon's legendary home at the Dakota in New York City. A place where inspiration flowed, history was made, and unfortunately, where one of the most tragic moments in rock and roll took place. The Dakota wasn't just an apartment. It was Lennon's creative sanctuary, where he lived out his quieter years as a family man, a songwriter, and occasionally a monopoly tycoon, because if you thought he was just collecting royalties, you should have seen him collecting Boardwalk and Park Place. But the Dakota wasn't all peace, love, and high property values. It was home to some of Lennon's most eccentric moments, like recording in his bathroom for better acoustics and casually walking through Central Park, confusing tourists who thought they just saw a ghost from the Abbey Road cover. So, let's step inside the walls of this iconic building, uncover the life Lennon built within it, and explore how this place became forever etched in music history. If the Dakota had a resume, it would read, New York's most mysterious and exclusive residence since 1884. This isn't just an apartment building, it's a fortress of luxury, standing tall on the corner of 72nd Street like an old, eccentric uncle who's seen it all. With its dark, castle-like design, turrets, and looming archways, the Dakota looks like it belongs in a Gothic novel rather than on the Upper West Side. You half expect to see Dracula waving from one of the balconies. But inside, pure elegance, high ceilings, grand fireplaces, and enough space to make even the biggest egos feel small. In the late 1800s, New Yorkers thought it was crazy to build something so extravagant so far from the city's action. The joke's on them. The Dakota became the place for the rich, famous, and delightfully eccentric. Over the years, it housed legends like Leonard Bernstein, Lauren Bacall, and of course, John Lennon. But here's the catch. Getting in is harder than sneaking backstage at a Beatles concert. The Dakota's co-op board is infamous for rejecting A-list celebrities. If you think your landlord is picky, imagine being Madonna and still getting told, yeah, no. In 1973, John Lennon and Yoko Ono moved into the Dakota, trading the chaos of Beatlemania for something a little quieter. Well, as quiet as life with John Lennon could get. They weren't just looking for an apartment, they were looking for a sanctuary. And the Dakota, with its towering gates and celebrity-proof walls, felt like the perfect retreat. For Lennon, this wasn't just a place to live, it was a place to breathe. He spent his days wandering the grand hallways in his pajamas, writing songs at the piano, and making home recordings in the bathroom because, according to John, the acoustics were perfect. Yoko managed their business dealings while he played the role of a very committed house husband. And when their son Sean was born in 1975, Lennon put down his guitar, well, mostly, and picked up baby bottles instead. Forget the rock star life. John was all about diaper duty and baking bread now. He even made a point to do everyday dad things, like taking Sean to Central Park, reading bedtime stories, and teaching him music. Imagine learning your first lullaby from a Beatle. Talk about setting the bar high for dads everywhere. Their apartment was a creative playground. Between the grand piano, the walls lined with artwork, and the occasional impromptu jam session, inspiration was everywhere. Some of his final songs were written right there, in the cozy corners of the Dakota, as he looked out over the city he had come to love. For a while, life was simple, peaceful, almost normal. But of course, nothing about John Lennon's life ever stayed simple for long. No great love story is without its dramatic plot twist. Enter The Lost Weekend. No, not a forgotten Beatles track. This was Lennon's 18-month break from Yoko that was anything but relaxing. In 1973, their marriage hit a rocky patch, and Yoko, in true avant-garde fashion, arranged for John to go off with her assistant, May Pang. And where does a rock legend crash during his midlife rock and roll crisis? A sleek penthouse in Sutton Place, an upscale Manhattan neighborhood where the neighbors preferred wine tastings over wild parties, until John moved in, that is. The penthouse was a far cry from the Dakota's moody, castle-like vibe. It was modern, bright, and had killer views of the East River. But Lennon wasn't exactly spending his nights gazing at the skyline in deep reflection. This was his most reckless, wild child phase. Think partying with Mick Jagger, getting thrown out of clubs with Harry Nilsson, and somehow managing to get kicked out of the Troubadour for heckling a comedian because when you're John Lennon, even getting banned has to be iconic. But in between the chaos, Lennon rediscovered his love for music. He recorded Walls and Bridges here, worked with David Bowie on Fame, and even started mending fences with Paul McCartney. Still, the Dakota and Yoko were never far from his mind. And in 1975, Lennon packed up his rock star antics, walked away from the penthouse, and went home. December 8, 1980, started like any other day for John Lennon. He was back in the groove, happy, creating music and enjoying life with Yoko and Sean at the Dakota. That morning, he gave an interview where he spoke about how excited he was for the future. "I consider my work only just begun," he said. Fate, however, had other plans. By evening, Lennon and Yoko were wrapping up a recording session at the record plant studio. As they left the Dakota earlier that day, a fan had stopped him. Just another admirer with a copy of Double Fantasy in hand. Lennon, always generous with fans, signed it. That fan was Mark David Chapman. Hours later, as their limo pulled up to the Dakota's grand archway, Lennon stepped out, walking toward the entrance. In an instant, the silence of the night was shattered by 5 gunshots. Chapman, the same man John had kindly signed an autograph for just hours earlier, stood there, gun in hand, as Lennon collapsed onto the pavement. The doorman, horrified, shouted, "Do you know what you just did?" Chapman's eerie response, "Yes, I just shot John Lennon." Bleeding and barely conscious, Lennon was rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, but the damage was too great. At 10:50 p.m., John Lennon, the dreamer, the icon, the man who had given the world so much, was gone. The news spread like wildfire. Fans gathered outside the Dakota in stunned silence. The world had lost a legend, and the Dakota had lost its most famous resident. And just like that, what was once Lennon's safe haven became a place of heartbreak. The world stopped when the news broke. John Lennon was gone. It didn't feel real. How could the man who sang about peace and love be taken by violence? Fans flooded the streets outside the Dakota, candles flickering in the cold December air. Some wept, others sang, "Imagine," their voices trembling. Across the globe, spontaneous vigils erupted. London, Tokyo, Sydney. The world wasn't just mourning a musician, it was mourning a dreamer. Yoko, devastated, made one request: no funeral. Instead, she asked fans to honor John in their own way. On December 14th, the world fell silent for 10 minutes. Tens of thousands gathered in Central Park. Radio stations went quiet. Even New York traffic miraculously stood still. And the Dakota? It would never be just another building again. The place that had once been John's creative sanctuary had become a symbol of loss. But just across the street, in Central Park, something beautiful took root. In 1985, Yoko helped establish Strawberry Fields, a peaceful garden dedicated to John. At its center, a simple mosaic with one word: imagine. A place where fans still gather, guitars in hand, keeping his spirit alive. Because legends don't die, they just echo on. Even after Lennon's passing, the Dakota remained one of New York's most exclusive addresses, part luxury residence, part living legend. The building that once housed a Beatle continued to attract the elite, the eccentric, and the downright legendary. Over the years, stars like Lauren Bacall, Leonard Bernstein, and Judy Garland called the Dakota home. Even modern-day celebrities have tried to move in: Madonna, Cher, Antonio Banderas. But the Dakota's infamous co-op board is stricter than a Beatles reunion. Most applicants, no matter how famous, get a polite but firm "no thanks." Pop culture hasn't forgotten the Dakota either. It's been immortalized in movies like Rosemary's Baby, adding to its eerie, almost mythical aura. Countless books, documentaries, and conspiracy theories have kept its legend alive. Some even whisper about ghostly figures seen in its grand hallways. But for music lovers, the Dakota will always be Lennon's home. Tourists still gather outside, snapping photos, leaving flowers, and singing Imagine under their breath. Time has passed, and the city has changed, but the Dakota remains, standing tall, silent, and forever linked to the man who turned it into something more than just a building. It became a piece of history. John Lennon may have left the world in 1980, but his influence? That's forever. His music still plays, his words still inspire, and his vision for peace still echoes across generations. From Imagine to Strawberry Fields Forever, his songs remain anthems, not just for fans but for dreamers everywhere. And the Dakota? It's more than just an old, exclusive New York apartment building. It's a landmark of music history, a place where Lennon found peace, created art, and lived his final years. Its grand archways and darkened windows have seen it all. The joy of a Beatle at home, the heartbreak of a life cut short, and the devotion of fans who refuse to forget. Even today, people gather outside, leaving flowers, whispering lyrics, and honoring a man who changed the world with his music. Across the street, Strawberry Fields stands as a quiet tribute, a reminder that dreams don't die, and neither do legends. Because John Lennon wasn't just a musician, he was a movement, a voice, a symbol. And no matter how many years pass, the Dakota will always stand as the place where he lived, loved, and left a legacy that will never fade away. On that note, we wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed this look into John Lennon's legendary apartment, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.